Hey guys, what's going on? It's SORROWFUL here, and today I'm going to show you all the tips and tricks there is to know for the MapleStory 2 dungeon known as TRONIX Bunker. First off, TRONIX Bunker is one of 4 normal difficulty level 50 dungeons that players can do in MapleStory 2. It's a common go-to dungeon for many players due to the fact that if done correctly, it can be one of the quickest dungeons to clear whether in a party or riding solo. It's also in high demand because it has a chance to drop some pretty neat accessories and equips that are exclusive to this dungeon. So without further ado, let's dive right in. When you first enter the dungeon, you'll be greeted with a brief cutscene showcasing the 2 mini-bosses of the dungeon. Keep in mind that you can instantly start moving with your character as soon as you skip the cutscene. The first major time saver of the dungeon is the fact that all of the mobs you see can be completely skipped and avoided. You have no idea how many times I've gone into this dungeon only to find that there's still one of my party members fighting the ads while the rest of us are fighting the bosses. The only thing you have to worry about is activating the indicated switches, of which there are 3 in total. Don't worry about being hit by the mobs, as they're rather slow and terrible at aiming. Once you and your team have activated all 3 switches, you're going to want to grab one of the electrical canisters in that final room before heading into the teleporter. This next part works best in a party of 4 and requires a tiny bit of coordination along with a little bit of RNG. Once you have your canister in hand, it's a good idea to use any buffs you may have such as Sharp Eyes or Infinity just before you enter the teleporter. This will save you a bit of time, allowing you to maximize your DPS in the next step. Once you enter the teleporter, you want to immediately use the action key and throw the canister directly at the 2 bosses. If RNG is on your side, then the 2 bosses will be close enough together for you to hit both of them with a single canister. This process can really make or break a new dungeon record, considering that each canister not only paralyzes each boss for 6 seconds, but also instantly deals 25% of their health as damage upon impact. This means that if you and your party all hit both bosses with a canister each, then you can completely bypass this otherwise tedious stage, which looks a little something like this.
How'd you do me like that? How'd you go do me like that? How'd you use me like that? Just expose me like that? How'd you dispose me like that?
Well, crikey mate, what if I'm soloing here? Well, then there's good news and bad news. The bad news is, you have no friends. But the good news is, that as you can see from this footage, you're still able to nuke 25% HP off both bosses, and shortly after they're stunned, you can make use of the 2 extra canisters located here and here to further help you nuke each boss, leaving them with little HP for you to deal with. To gain access to these 2 canisters is very simple. For the canister on the bottom left side of the map, the fence should be broken by the boss that shoots the X-shaped set of lasers. Luckily, this is meant to happen and should occur every single time you run this dungeon. For the bottom right canister, you need one of the 2 mini-bosses to shoot their laser at you while you're standing near the fence in front of it, and once you see their laser fire up, all you have to do is dodge the hit and the fence will then be broken. Also, if RNG isn't on your side, well, then this will happen. Or, you can choose to nuke and stun only one of the bosses, which would probably be the smarter thing to do in this instance. Now on to the final boss fight of the dungeon. Here's where 90% of your run will take place, assuming you followed all the aforementioned steps. There are several important functions to know during this boss fight, starting with the fact that he will always have more or less the same attacking pattern. Thanks to this boss is really easy to predict once you've taken him on 3 or 4 times. If you don't have Sharp Eyes on, then you may have failed to notice that there are many secret canisters hidden around this map, and the good news is that all of them are accessible. For starters, I'll go ahead and show you guys where each canister is hidden, followed by how to access each one individually. To kick things off in the bottom left, we have 1 canister located on the bottom left rooftop, we have 1 on the middle right rooftop, 2 located underneath the floors near the middle area, and lastly, there's a whopping 5 canisters located behind the top left fence, just behind where the boss initially spawns. If your quick maths are on point, then you'll know that there are 9 total canisters available during this boss fight. However, that's only if you know how to access them. To access the left and middle rooftop canisters, you'll need to make the boss use his rush or dashing skill into the fence. Doing so will grant you access to the portals that both lead to the respective roof. It's important to note that the boss has to dash into the fence relatively directly, and it won't work if he's dashing alongside the fence or even out of the fence back towards the battlefield. This trick is much easier done if you're soloing the dungeon, as then the boss has no choice but to aggro onto you, whereas being in a party can make it difficult to coordinate the boss's aggression as well as positioning. To access the canisters underneath the floor, you'll need to make the boss use his flashlight explosion ability directly on the ground where the canisters are located. The easiest way to pull this trick off is to become acquainted with the boss's pattern and simply stand on the glass tiles when you know he's going to use that flashlight explosion ability. Lastly, to access the 6 canister jackpot located behind the far back fence of the arena, you're going to need the boss to use his dash ability straight into the fence yet again. However, as you will see from these clips, it appears to be very hit and miss on when the fence will actually break. I find the most success when the boss is looking in the perfect angle and is about 15% closer towards that corner than the center of the arena. Because the bulk of these canisters require some manipulation to be obtained, I wouldn't recommend solely depending on these canisters as a means to clear this dungeon. However, I would recommend to remember these tips while fighting the boss and to use your current position on the map to your advantage. For example, if you're fighting the boss as a close-ranged hero and you find yourself in the bottom center of the map alongside the boss, then it would probably be a beneficial idea to pay attention to the boss's skill rotation and try to get access to the canisters underneath the floor, all while continuing to dish out the damage. My final important note is that the way this dungeon works is if a mob hits you while you're holding the canister, then nothing will happen. However, if any of the 3 bosses hit you while you're holding the canister, then the canister will in fact disappear. Keeping everything in mind, if you and your party follow this guide, then you should be able to get sub 4-minute runs fairly consistently. If you guys would like to see me do a guide on all the other level 50 dungeons in the game, then be sure to let me know in the comment section right below that like button. That's all for this time, Maplers, so get out there and continue your quest for epic loot.